Cool. So you guys all texted me today. I think most of you, otherwise Geordie on the IEB group shared my message. So if you need the link or anything, just text me. Okay, so I'm going to post this on, I know lots of people have load shedding, and I'm going to post this recording. I actually only just hit record. I'm going to record it and then post it on our YouTube channel. Okay, so I'm just going to also tell you guys what they mark you down for, just to help. So for section A, this is our short questions, and there's only 4 questions, and then there's like short questions, there's a paragraph. The paragraph we can also treat as short questions, basically. We just want to answer nicely, you won't be giving 1-word answers. And then we have question 3, which is our dialogue. And then question 4, which people freak out about, but it's really not that bad. Okay, if you can do the first part of the paper, this is perfectly fine. All you're going to add is a tiny intro and a tiny conclusion. That's it. Okay, so the more facts you know, the better. And all your facts are available to you. There are videos. If you guys aren't on our Telegram groups, there are video links on YouTube. There are literally awesome summaries for every single chapter. I know it's a bit boring sometimes, I get that, but it's useful. Okay, there's lots of facts. They do ask facts. So I don't know if everyone has done past papers before, but the more past papers you do, the better, from as many schools as possible. Okay, so let's start with the first one. For these questions, I'm going to show you the answers as well, so that you also learn other options. Just quickly before we do that, I want to show you what you like, the guidelines. These are the guidelines for the teachers that have to mark you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what you can and can't do. So for this one, it says names may be spelled incorrectly, but you still have to be able to read the name. So like if you spell Lizette as something completely unrelated, then they won't acknowledge it. Okay, you do have to know how to spell the main characters' names and surnames. Okay, when there's a specific name of an important character, so all your main characters, you need to spell it correctly. Okay, and then English words may be used if those English words are used in the book. So a good example of this would be Wolfie's pawn shop. So a pawn shop, as in PAWN, pawn shop, is to pawn something. So you're given, it's like something that you own, you give it and they give you money. And we know that Buddies does that with a bunch of his stuff at Wolfie's pawn shop. So you're completely fine to use pawn shop and things like that. But the reason it's useful to learn the Afrikaans is because if they ask the Afrikaans word in the question, it would be nice to know what they're talking about. So for instance, if they said Pintjies winkel, that's pawn shop. Or if they used the verb for pawn, so to sell something, and you said verpand, that would be useful to know. Okay, so words that are spelled incorrectly, where they can't understand the meaning, so it gives a different meaning, they would not mark that correctly. And then marks are not deducted for wrong language. So you don't have to worry about your sentence structure here. But of course, if you focus on writing decently, it just means that they might have a better chance to understand. Okay, and then marks will not, oh, we said that. Okay, and then this one is, okay, so I know a lot of people like to give a ton of information, and sometimes you just hope that the right answer's in there. You want to keep it short and sweet, okay? So just facts. So this says, if the first part of a question is wrong, but the second part is correct, then it's cool, they can give you the mark still, okay? But if then yeah, it says use your own initiative, so use your own judgment. If it looks like the candidate misunderstood the question and just took a shot in the dark and gave many different answers, then mark it wrong. I just want to read one of the questions. What is on YouTube? Sorry, I'll answer that later. Okay, so our first question, I'm going to fill in blanks while we go through this. So this is just a little table. It doesn't always look like this. This is just one of the papers. So this paper is always a tiny little bit more difficult because it is a rewrite. So it's like a second attempt. So it's a tiny bit tougher, but it's still a bunch of facts. So the more facts you know for Asem, the better. Okay, so it says complete the police report from the car accident the night of Buddy's birthday. Only write the number and the question. So the vocab is a tiny little bit tougher than the November paper from 2020. Okay, so this says police report, extract car accident. Okay, so it says driver of the car, the motor driver's name and surname. So we know that is Theo de Kock. Okay. And then the blood test results of the driver. So obviously, if someone gets into an accident where they might be drunk or high, they do blood tests. Okay, so this says name of one of the forbidden or illegal drugs in the driver's blood. Okay, so for this one, lots of people have said alcohol. I don't think that alcohol is an illegal drug. So I would have stuck to the drugs, okay? But anyway, so yes, dacha or Durban poison, that's the same thing. He buys weed, but it's Durban poison. That's just the name of the weed. That's what they buy at butcher. Then ecstasy, or you could have said MDMA, and then alcohol's the last one. I personally wouldn't have said alcohol if they said drugs. Okay, then plekke wat voor die ongeluk besoek is. So this is places that were visited before the accident. So they went to 2 clubs. Actually, yeah, they went to 2 clubs. So the first, so yeah, they specifically tell you the name of one of the clubs where the passengers of the car were before the accident. So in order, it was Gold Miners Delight. That is the club where Butcher is the bouncer. And then they went to not Butcher, what am I saying? The big guy. What's his name? Jumbo Creer. So that's where Jumbo Creer is the bouncer. That's the first club, and that's a more decent one. And that's where they get kicked out of because Buddy's headbutts the guy. Okay, then they go to Butcher Shop, they buy some more drugs, and then they go to the second club, which is dodgy, and they make it sound like they call it like a backstreet club where drugs are used openly. And that one is called Rainbow Delight. Okay, they both have the word delight. Just think G is before R in the dictionary. So Gold Miners Delights first and then Rainbow Delight. Okay, and then the next one is volwassenes. So often they'll give you the theme. So don't skip over anything that they read you because it might jog your memory. So yeah, it says volwassenes wat buddies op sy pad na heling gehelp het. So that means adults that helped buddies on his road to healing. Okay, so the first one, 1.2, Sergeant Truda steps in again. So this is her talking, and this is her talking to Captain Feka, and she says, he's a child, can't we give him another chance? Okay, so that's the scene in the hospital when Buddies was unconscious for, I think, 2 days because he took too much of the smetadwellums, which is the contaminated drugs. Okay, so that's her convincing Captain Feka to give him another chance because he's just a kid and he's sick. And she's trying to come up with reasons. And she's like, well, he can help us, track down all the drug dealers versus us arresting him and not getting anywhere with that. Okay, so 1.2.1 says, watter persoonlike inligting het Nico vir Buddies oor haarself gegee? Which personal information did Nico give Buddies about herself? And you can see it's 2 marks. We always look at how many marks, even if it doesn't say give 2 facts. Okay, 2 marks, 2 facts. So there's a bunch of stuff that she gives him here. This is actually a conversation that happens on the bus. Okay, so she says that she's 24 years old. Her Nico is short for Nicoline. Her parents live in Randburg and she lives with them. She has 3 brothers. She is engaged. Her fiance is a makelaar, which just means a broker. She also mentions that he lives in Brakpan, and then she's getting married in a year. Okay, so those are easy facts. You just take whatever resonates with you and just learn that. They wouldn't ask too many, I don't think. Okay, and then 1.2.3, waarom kon Paul nie self vir Buddies by die bus kom haal nie? So check how they jump from, they jump all over the place, okay? But this is, why could Paul not fetch Buddies from the bus himself? Why did he send Steph to fetch him with the red beach buggy? It's because Paul's 4x4 was broken. So Paul's 4x4 is gebreek. Okay. Just want to see something. Yeah. Okay, so that's why I couldn't fetch him, because his 4x4 was broken down. And I did skip over 1.2.2, which just says give 2 pieces. Bevesa means pieces of evidence. Okay, so it's proof that Nico was worried about buddies at Seaplas. So this word bekommerd is very important for you to just know in general. It could even come up in your communicatie and paper 1. It just means worried. So how do we know Nico was worried? She didn't just dump him and move on. So if you guys remember, she gave him 2 cards when they got off the bus at Humansdorp. She gave him 2 little cards. The one had a number on that buddies could phone if his dad became violent. So if Paul became violent. And the other card had her number, and she said that he can text her or call her anytime. Okay, so the options here are she gave him a card with her number. She phoned buddies a few times while he was at the class, so at Seaplas. She sent buddies a message when he was at Seaplas. He always sees texts from her. She phoned buddies to tell him when the traffic cop died. If you guys remember, he was driving back from the vet, and that's when he has the car accident in Paul's 4x4. He's driving around a hairpin turn in the road, and he crashes. Just after that, when he's getting out of the car to check the damage, because he drove by himself because Paul was too drunk, he gets a call from Nico, and she says that the traffic cop died. And then his reaction, that's the first time he shows remorse, and he feels like it's his fault. Up until that point, he said it wasn't him that was driving. This is the first time where he's like, this is my fault. Okay, and then the last option is that she phoned buddies to tell him that his mom was attacked. Okay, on Christmas Day. That phone call was from her. Cool, so there's lots of options there. And then the next one, 1.3, the quote is, hey, heart may. So this is buddies saying he hates me, talking about Captain Mfeka. And he's like, oh, the captain hates me. And then Nico's like, no. And then she touches his arm and she says, the captain cares very much. And then buddy says, not about me. He wants to he wants to lock me up with scollies. Okay, and then she says, hy wil net nie hê jy moet dieselfde pad as sy eie seun loop nie. He just doesn't want you to walk the same road as his own son. Okay, so I don't know if everyone knows this, but Captain Feka has a son who's in prison, I think for 10 years, because he started smoking weed, then it escalated all the way up to heroin, and he assaulted someone and they died. So he's in prison for that. So the reason Captain Freka gives buddies another chance is because he doesn't want another young person to walk that same road if it can be prevented. So if buddies goes to the Eastern Cape, that's where Captain Feka became a man, and that's where his parents still live. Then buddies could rehabilitate himself, or he could, get clean off drugs, and then there's less of a chance for him ending up in prison. Okay, so that's what they're talking about here. 1.3.1 says, wat het Nico vir buddies van Captain Feka se seun vertel? So what did Nico tell buddies about Captain Feka's son? It's only 1 mark, so we would just say he's in prison for drugs or killing someone. Okay, so we're going to go through the options though, just to learn. Captain Feka se seun het iemand aangerand. So that's Captain Feka's son assaulted someone. Aangerand is a useful word. It's assaulted. So, it could come up when we talk about this, or Vera. It's a useful word. And then sy seun het iemand doodgemaak. His son killed someone. Okay, because she says someone's died. Okay, then sy seun was in die tronk, his son's in prison. Sy seun het ook dwelms gebruik. His son also used drugs. Any one of those would get you the mark. Okay, and then 1.3.2, noem 2 maniere hoe die polisie vir buddies gehelp het. So name 2 ways in which the police helped buddies. So there's quite a few options. We're going to go through all of them, just so that you guys can pick what's easy for you. Go look at the answers and think, which vocab can I cope with? There's no point in trying to learn 200 new words in your last 6 weeks of Matric. So just see, and sometimes if you don't know how to say something in the positive, you might have the negative vocab, then just use it the other way around. In a lot of my lessons, I try work with the vocab of the student, just because it's easier. Okay, 1.3.2. Let me just recap the question. So 2 ways in which the police helped buddies, right? So 1, a big one, he didn't go to prison. So hy het nie tronk toe gegaan nie. Hulle het al die klagtes teruggetrek. So when he agrees to go for rehab and he gets there, Niku tells him what's the word in English when you pull back the charges? You not cancel the charges, you withdraw. So they withdrew all the charges against buddies. They bought the bus ticket to Seerplaas. Sergeant Schroeder went with buddies to Seerplaas. That's helpful because otherwise he would have definitely jumped off the bus as he threatened. And then they help him to get away from drugs. If it wasn't for them, he wouldn't rehabilitate. He would have just carried on and probably ended up killing himself. Okay, and then the last one is 1.3.3. Who must buddies vir die polisie help? So how was buddies supposed to help the police? So the deal was that he would show them where he buys his drugs. Okay, so hy moet vir die polisie wys waar mens dwelms kan koop. Or so he either needs to show them where you can buy drugs or where all the drug dealers are. Okay, so with your vocab, you just pick. I think the first one's very easy. Buddies moet vir die polisie wys waar mense dwelms koop. Pretty simple. And another tip is if you get confused with pronouns, if you get confused, then rather use the first name, just say buddies instead of hy. Okay, or buddies moet Paul instead of hy moet sy paas, things like that. Okay, 1.4, let's look at it. The quote is, soos 'n klip sink hy dieper in die watergat af, die water raak kouer om hom, eindelik ijskoud. Okay, so this scene is from when Buddies has just saved Jonah, and he's kind of a little bit paralyzed because he's taken so many painkillers, so he can't swim properly. So he gets pulled into the ocean and he's basically drowning, and Paul saves him. And it's also thanks to Jonah that he does get saved, because Jonah barks and barks so that Paul can see where he is. Okay, 1.4.1, nadat Paul vir Buddies uit die see gered het. So after Paul saved Buddies from the sea, het Paul soos 'n regte pa na Buddies gekyk. Paul looks after Buddies like a real dad. Gee een bewys van Paul se liefdevolle versorging na die redding. So give one piece of evidence of Paul's loving care after the saving. Okay, so basically all those things he did to keep Buddies alive afterwards. Okay, so he put him in a warm bath, because remember he'd be freezing, right? He put cream or oil or it's like lotion on his cuts, because Buddies was scraped and cut from all the shells and from the rocks. And like you guys know, when you swim in the ocean, even just the sand and stuff hurts with the waves hitting against you. Okay, so but he got proper cut. Okay, so sy pa het vir hom droë klere aangetrek. He dressed Buddies in warm clothing. Sy pa het die hele tyd by hom gesit. His dad sat with him the whole time. So I don't remember that distinctly. I would stick to the most obvious ones. He put him in a warm bath and he dressed him in warm clothes. Okay, and sy pa het hom vir hom koffie and pink pille gegee. He gave him pink pills, which are the painkillers, and also coffee. Out of these ones, I would say the safest ones. Warm bath, dry clothing, and he put oil and lotion on his cuts. He really cared for him. Okay, then 1.4.2, gee een voorbeeld van hoe Paul vir Jonah help het. Give one example of how Paul helped Jonah. So he also put him in a warm place. Let's go here. So hy het vir Jonah van die rotse afgedra. So after he put Buddies in the house, he carried Jonah all the way from the rock, so down by the ocean. Hy het vir Jonah gemaklik voor die stoof gemaak. He made Jonah comfortable in front of the stove. So I don't know if you guys have all checked what stove they are talking about, but you can Google an image of it. It's like a coal stove. So olden day stoves, you made fire in the stove and then cooked on top of it. So you put like wood in, and that's what they do, yeah, because you don't need electricity for that. But if you just keep the little door open, then there's like a warm fire. So it's like a fireplace. So that's where Jonah and buddies were put after this incident. Okay, that's why they slept in the kitchen, if anyone was wondering. Okay, and then hey, 2000 rand betaal. So Paul paid 2,000 rand, the money that Buddy still owed for Jonah. Remember? And then he said that Dr. Greta Hakkinen gave it as discount. It wasn't discount. Paul paid for it. Okay, and then Buddy's only finds out later, and he's like, no, I'll pay for it. Okay, and then 1.4.3. Buddies het teruggegaan Johannesburg toe om by sy ma te wees. So Buddies went back to Joburg to be with his mom. Okay, waarom het Paul reg deur die nag gery om by Buddies in Johannesburg te kom? Why did Paul drive right through the night to get to Buddies in Joburg? Okay, this is when Olga is on her way to Buddies, and she stole Paul's pistol and she robbed him, and then he only finds out later that she was robbing him. Okay, so the reasons he drove through the night, which would tell you that he was panicked, because otherwise he could just wait till the next day, right? Olga was op pad na Buddies too. So the reason he drove is because he knew Olga was on the way to Buddies with a pistol, and she's, temptation. Olga stole Paul's geweer. You can say geweer, which just means gun. You can say pistool, which is P-I-S-T-O-O-L, pistool. That's a pistol. I think that either one would be useful, because when we talk about butcher in a different part of the book, you could also say geweer. Okay, hy was bang Olga verlei Buddies. Paul was scared that Olga might tempt Buddies or seduce Buddies, so into hooking up with her or the drugs. And that's 100% exactly why she does go there. She goes there with heroin, which is crazy. And then Buddies says no. Okay, and then Buddies het hom nodig. He also knows that Buddies needs him. Buddies is all by himself now without his mom. And then hy wil Buddies nie weer in die steek laat nie. So he doesn't want to let Buddies down again, like when Buddies was 5 and he had to go. And then hy wil hê Buddies moet saam met hom Seeplaas toe gaan. So he wants Buddies to go back to Seeplaas with him. Okay, lots of options. And then the next one, question 2, this is the paragraph one. And I love the way the IEB sets this up. It's so easy. It's basically just answering short questions. You're just going to make sure that you answer them in full sentences, whereas in the top ones, it's okay if you don't. Okay, so 2.1, actually always read this. I almost skipped it. So Olga die verleidster. So this is Olga the seductress. Okay, skryf a paragraph or write a paragraph of 80 to 120 words. It actually is kind of tough sticking into that word count if you answer these properly. And you want to write it about Olga's. I hope everyone knows that "sa" is like an apostrophe S, hey? So Olga's background and her role in Buddies' growing up process. Okay, because he grows up in these few weeks in Seeplaas. Okay, your paragraph must have facts and include all of this. It's just this. That's all you have to do. Okay, so gee een feit omtrent Olga se kinderjare. So give one fact about Olga's childhood. So what do we know about Olga's childhood? We know that she grew up in an orphanage. And where did she grow up in an orphanage? In Namibia. So I would say in Windhoek, right? Which is in Namibia, it's the capital. So I would say Olga grew up in an orphanage in Windhoek or in Namibia, because then you just guarantee your marks. So we'll go through these options. Sy het groot geword in 'n kinderhuis. So kinderhuis means an orphanage. Okay, which is, I think the word's quite easy in Afrikaans. Sy het weggeloop van die kinderhuis. She ran away from the orphanage. Originally, she told Buddies that she ran away from her parents' house, but then around Christmas, we find out that's a lie. She did not have parents. She's an orphan. Okay, and then waar het Olga en Stef mekaar ontmoet? Where did Olga and Steph meet each other? So they met in a, what's the correct word? It's like a clinic for people that are in need of like therapy and stuff. So there's a bunch of different ways you can say this. So Olga and Steph het in 'n inrigting ontmoet. So that means they met in an institution. Donken is the name of that institution. And then this is hospital for like psychotic people, basically, or people that are sick emotionally or mentally. It's basically mentally ill people. That's what they're saying. And then, yeah, they also said hospital vir malmense. So this is not politically correct. This is completely rude, but it is the easiest one. Okay, so you can also say a mal huis, just because then you would get the mark. It just means a house for crazy people. So obviously we don't think that. It's just the easiest way to get the mark. Okay, next one is gee een feit oor Olga en Steph se verhouding. Give one fact about Olga and Steph's relationship. So, I mean, Steph's super jealous. Yeah, Steph is by jaloers. That's the word for jealous. He hits Olga is a very obvious one. So that's also an easy one. Olga is bang vir hom. Olga is very scared of him, and she is much younger than him. So any one of those facts would be perfect. I would always just keep it a bit safe and just mention two of them. So Olga is by jonger as Steph. Hy slaan Olga, anything like that. Okay, and then waar het Buddies vir Olga die eerste keer gesien? Where, so look at the question word, where did Buddies see Olga for the first time? So if you remember, it was on the rocks. She was tanning naked, and Buddies was just like walking around and then taking a different route home, and he stumbled across her literally by accident. And then that's before he met her properly. So the place would be op die rotse, but we want us to say like a sentence because it is a paragraph. So you would just say, Buddies het Olga vir die eerste keer op die rotse gesien. So he saw on the rocks. Okay, and then hoe het Buddies sy obsessie met Olga deur middel van kuns uitgedruk? So how did Buddies, here's the verb, uitgedruk, is expressed. So how did Buddies express his obsession with Olga? Through art. Deur middel van is through art. Okay, kuns is art. Kuns is an important word for you guys to know because of Paul Beeg, an artist. You want to know that he does two types of art. He does the sculpting and he does the painting. Okay, so back to the question, how did he express it? So if you guys remember, he made a statue out of clay of Olga. And then at one part she comes in and she like seduces him. She actually does it twice in one day. She says, can you undo my bikini top when they went to the lighthouse? She doesn't want to tan marks. And then the other one is when she comes into the Paul's studio, his art studio, and Buddy is busy working on his sculpture of Olga. She puts his hands on her boobies and she says, don't you think the boobs are too small on that sculpture? Okay, so that's just what she does. That's why they call her a seductress. Okay, so how did he express it? He made a beeld. So a beeld you would know from poetry. So Buddies maak a beeld van Olga. So that means he makes a sculpture of her. Okay, and then wat wou Buddies aan die einde van die verhaal met hierdie kunswerk doen? So what did Buddies want to do at the end of the story with this artwork? So if you remember in chapter 25, he's deliberately doesn't put the stuff on that you need to preserve a sculpture. There's something you're supposed to put on, and he doesn't do that. So he lets it disintegrate. So Buddies wil die beeld los om te disintegreer. He wants to just leave the sculpture so it disintegrates because he wants the memory of her to go with it. Okay, so that's like a deeper thing. And then this one is verduidelik hoe Buddies se obsessie met Olga amper sy lewe gekos het, and we see that that is 2 marks. So even if they don't tell you, name 2 facts, you want to look in brackets and see how many facts they want, because these questions are super fact-based, which is great. I think it's actually a good thing. It's not as deep, you know. Explain how Buddies' obsession with Olga almost cost him his life. So, well, for one, he almost had a spear gun shot through him. Well, spear. Okay, so Steph finds Buddies by Olga. Steph finds Buddies with Olga. Remember when he's hiding under the bed on Christmas Day? And then the reason Steph finds him is because, so Steph's already suspicious because Jonah's at his property and he knows that Jonah follows buddies everywhere. So he's like, where's buddies? And then Olga's like, he's not here because the dog's there. Okay, so Steph finds buddies with Olga, and then Steph wants to shoot buddies with one of the arrows from the spear gun. Fully actually saves his life there. And then the last one is Olga het aan die einde van die verhaal vir buddies dwelms gebring. So Olga brought buddies drugs at the end of the story. What was Buddy's reaction? What was Buddy's reaction? So that's a nice, easy one. He says, no, thank you. He's done with drugs. And then he's still trying to tell her not to, and then she injects herself and passes out. So Buddy say, hey, is klaar met dwelms. Buddy says he's done with drugs. Okay, and then just off topic a little bit, but at the end in chapter 25, when the bird, Nelson, is in the cage at Paul's house on the little stoop thing, he's in his cage and his little cage doors open so that he can go and come as he pleases. So he's welcome to be there or go out and come back. The fact that Nelson is no longer in a cage is supposed to represent, it's supposed to be like a metaphor for buddies being free from drugs. So he's free of his addiction now, just so everyone knows that. Okay, 2.2. Hey, word ook nie die klap van die face hou nie. So he also doesn't hear the clap or the noise from the fist, like the punch. So this is on Christmas Day. It's the scene outside of Steph's house where what's his name, Paul finds out that Steph told Buddies, like his biggest secret, that Buddies is not his child or his biological child. And then Steph knocks him twice and he falls over the second time. So hy sien net hoe tree Steph agteruit toe Paul hom vol in die gesig slaan dat die bloed uit sy neus spat. That just means how he, as in Buddy, sees how Steph steps backwards when Paul hits him in the face and blood like sprays out of his nose. Die volgende is 'n haakhou teen die kaak wat die reus se knie laat knak en hom een kant toe laat steier tot die grond uitgestrek het. So that's just a very extravagant way of saying the second punch hits Steph in the jaw and the big giant's knees buckle and he falls down. Okay, so that's just, he gets hit twice, Steph, by Paul. 2.2.1, waarom denk jy het Paul vir Steph toegelaat om op die plaas te bly? Even though it says, do you think? It's not about what we think, it's about the facts. So why do you think Paul allowed Steph to stay on the farm? So remember that Paul grew up in Steph's house because Paul's dad was a wife beater and he was an alcoholic. So Steph allowed Paul to live with him. So because of that, Steph will always be welcome on Paul's farm. Okay, even though Buddies calls him a squatter, he's his best friend. And that farm is so big that Paul doesn't even know where Philly lives. That's how big the farm is. So I really don't think Steph living there is such an inconvenience. Okay, so Paul's dad hit his mom. So he was a wife beater. Vroue slaner is the word that you'd see in your book. Paul's pa het hom geslaan. Paul's dad apparently also hit him. And then he abused him. Mishandle is abused. And Paul grew up with Steph. So these are weak answers. We want to say that Paul grew up in Steph's house because his dad was an alcoholic, an alcoholist, and he abused his wife. Okay, then 2.2.2. Waarom het Paul vir Steph in 'n oomblik van woede geslaan? Why did Paul hit Steph in a moment? Guys, you should learn this word, by the way. I've been seeing it in some of the TAL questions and it keeps getting everyone. Oomblik is moment. Okay, so why did Paul hit Steph in a moment of rage? Because he told Buddies. So Steph het vir Buddies vertel dat Paul nie sy biologiese pa is nie. So Steph told Buddies that Paul's not his biological father. That is the biggest secret. It's like the climax of the whole book. It's the most important thing. Okay, and what's it called? Paul kept waiting to tell Buddies. He was waiting for the right time. He wanted to tell him himself, and then Steph just went and told him just to hurt him. Then 2.2.3, waarom dink jy was Stef ongelukkig oor Buddy se koms na die plaas? So why do you think Stef was unhappy about Buddy's arrival at the plaas? So at Sia plaas, give 2 reasons. So he definitely affected the relationship between Stef and Paul. So Stef is jaloers op Buddy's. So Stef is jealous of Buddy's because since Buddy's got to the farm, Paul keeps taking Buddy's side in arguments versus Stef's side, whereas Stef and Paul are like brothers, so they always are tight. And then since Buddy's came, Stef is like the second person because Buddy's is there. Okay, and then Stef is scared that Paul will start drinking again. Okay, and then 2.2.4. Stef het aan die einde van die roman 'n nuwe meisie gehad. So Stef had a new girlfriend at the end of the story. So literally, if you go check, I think it's in chapter 25, all they say about this is there's a girl tanning like topless. That's it. That's all they say. But then they've made this whole assumption about her, which is quite hectic. So it says, wat het die leser laat dink dat die nuwe meisie soos Olga was? What made the reader think that the new girl was like Olga? So it's just the fact that she was tanning topless in the sun. Okay, I don't agree with the second answer because I think it's too far-fetched. It says she's also a seductress or a flirt. So I don't think just the fact that she's tanning topless in the sun can let us think that she's like Olga. So I think it's a bit far-fetched. Okay, and then we're just going to do the dialogue and we'll stop there. Okay, I think in the next one I'll do the essay just to show you guys it's not that tough. It's quite easy. Okay, question 3. A sielkundige. So you'll notice these are always like conversations that legit did not happen, but you have to answer them in fact. Okay, which makes it easier. So a sielkundige gesels na die motorongeluk met Buddy se ma oor Buddy se probleme. A psychologist chats or converses with Buddy's mom about Buddy's problems after the car accident. Okay, you have to complete the discussion between the psychologist and Buddy's mom. Okay, write just the number and your question down. Don't go rewrite this whole thing because that would waste all your time. So 3, I just want to read something quick. Please host free awesome revision lessons. Like this one. Okay, 3.1. I will have more workshops for you guys, but for TOL, I'm not going to do TOL one. So rather just go sign up and you like sign up for a month and then just cancel after your exam. So you only do 1 month, but I will do for awesome because there's so much, like there's so many free marks. Okay, 3.1, sielkundige. So that's the psychologist. Sorry, guys, I just want to answer someone quickly. Okay, I'll send the link at the end for us. Okay, but you can just go onto Limitless Tutor onto the website and it's under free course. I mean, it's under courses or online courses. So that's easier. Okay, 3.1. The psychologist says, hoe oud was Buddy's to Paul die gesin verlaat het? How old was Buddy's when Paul left the family? So Buddy's was 5 jaar oud. He was 5 years old. And you can do the math because he's 17 now. He's just had his 17th birthday. And then remember for this to answer in first person, hey? So if you are supposed to be Vera, you want to say ek, hey, first person. Don't speak in third person. Okay, 3.2, the psychologist says, wat laat jou dink dat Buddy's nie meer respek vir jou het nie? What lets you think that Buddy's does not have respect for you anymore? So this one's tough in the sense like, which one should you pick this? He literally does so many things. Like he grabs her keys out of her hands. He tells her what he'll be doing. Okay, so here are some options. Hy skree op my, so he shouts at me. Praat nie ordentlik met my nie means he doesn't speak to me decently. So you can say praat nie mooi met my nie. So that means he doesn't speak to me nicely. Hy is onbeskof, which means rude. Hy groet my nie as hy uitgaan nie. He doesn't say goodbye to me when he goes out. Hy sê ons bly in 'n duiwehok. He says we live in a pigeon cage. Hy sê ek smyt hom weg. He says I throw him away. Hy luister nie na my nie en doen wat hy wil. He doesn't listen to me and he does what he wants. Hy neem die motor al sê ek hy mag nie. He takes the car. This is such an important one. He takes the car when I say no. So she says no and then he takes it anyway. And then hy druk die foon dood terwyl ek met hom praat. So he puts the phone down on her And obviously doesn't have respect. So I'm just looking at these questions quickly. It's $2.95, and then you'll have access for the month. The nice thing is that you can watch it in your own time. It's a bit tough with your schedules to try have tutoring lessons. Okay, and then number 3.3, the psychologist says, why does Buddies think you still love Paul? Okay, so why does he think Vera still loves Paul? Daar is 'n foto van Paul in my kamer. There's a photo of Paul in my bedroom. Ek het gesê ek is jammer vir Paul. She said that she feels sorry for Paul. And this is when Buddies is asking her about why, if there was an interdict, which is a court order in place, why did Vera not phone the police? And then she said, I felt sorry for him, which she did. But she obviously, Buddies doesn't know why she felt sorry for him. It's because he defended her when she was raped, and that's why I ended up going to prison. Okay, and beat Buddies. Ek verdedig Paul, sê verander. So I defend Paul and I say that he changed. Okay, 3.4, the sielkundige or the psychologist says, jy het een middag op die woonstelbalkon in Johannesburg besef dat Buddies se dwelmprobleem sy dood kan veroorsaak. So this is important. You realized one afternoon on the apartment balcony in Johannesburg that Buddies' drug problem can cause his death. What did Buddies do on the balcony and why did he do it? 2 marks. Okay, so this is when he's high as a kite and he's walking on the railing and he's like, I wonder if I jump off, if God would save me. Obviously he's high, so Vera had to like grab him and pull him back. So Buddies wanted to jump from the balcony. That's the main thing. Buddies thought that he could fly. Buddies wanted to see if he could fly, or he thinks he's an angel. He thinks that God would catch him. I'm just reading a question. It says, was the interdict given because Paul was abusing Buddies? 100%. That's exactly why. The interdict was given. So it's a court order that says if you abuse your child before he turns 18, because after that it would be fine, then you would go to prison. So all that needed to happen was that Vera would have to call the police and then they would, arrest him. But she felt sorry for him because she knew the real reason. So he's like defending her honor. What is she supposed to do, Okay, the next one is 3.5. Sielkundige says, name 3 facts that prove to you that Buddies has a drug problem. Okay, so there's a lot. Okay, so hy doen nie meer atletiek nie. So he doesn't do athletics anymore. He doesn't run anymore. Hardloop is easier than long distance races. He can't take the stairs anymore. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but remember he has to take the lift because he can't take the stairs anymore because he's so unfit. Sy oogprobleme is baie rooi. So his eyes are always like red and scratchy and he always has to put like eye drops. And then he got thrown out of the cricket span, so he got kicked out of the cricket team, and he was really good. He was his school's #1 speed bowler. And then sy punte is swak. His marks are very poor. If you can't say swak, you just say hy het nie or hy kry nie goeie punte nie. He doesn't get good marks. Hy speel nie meer skaak nie. He doesn't play chess anymore. He was also the #1 player of chess in his school. And then ek ruik die dagga, she smells the weed. So I think by this they just mean he gives such a small amount of anything, like he smokes weed inside the apartment and then still denies it to his mom. He's like, no, I don't smoke weed. And then she's like, I know you do. And then he's like, okay, well, fine, it has medicinal qualities. Like he doesn't care at all. It's quite hectic. Then 3.6, sielkundige, she says, hoe voel jy oor Buddies se vriende? How do you feel about Buddies as friends? This is a nice, easy one. She doesn't like them. She thinks they're a bad influence. So, hulle het 'n slegte invloed op hom. So, they have a bad influence on him. And then 3.7, waarom wil Paul hê dat Buddies na die plaas toe moet kom? Why does Paul want Buddies to come to the farm? So he wants to fix things with him and he wants to tell Buddies the truth about what happened when he was 5. So he wants to fix things between Buddies and he wants to tell Buddies the truth. Waarheid is truth. Okay, about what happened and why he left. Okay, then 3.8. The sielkundige or the psychologist says, wat is die naam van die plaas waar Paul bly en noem ook een van die dorpe daar naby. So what's the name of the farm where Paul lives and name one of the towns nearby. So Seaplaas is the easiest name in the world. It just means sea farm. And it's one word. And Humansdorp is close, and the closest place is Kaap St. Francis. So the lighthouse they go to is Kaap St. Francis. Okay, St. Francis Bay is also there. St. Francis would be fine. Humansdorp is the nearest town, proper town, and then Jeffreys Bay is not as close. So just pick whichever one you want. Okay, and then sielkundige for 3.9 says, by wie het Paul geld gekry om die plaas te koop? So this is a good one. Who did Paul get money from to buy the farm? So from Paul Saopa. Okay, his grandfather, not Buddy's, Paul's grandpa. Okay, so just think about it. His grandpa left him the money, not his dad, who was a wife beater and an alcoholic. He didn't leave him anything. Okay, then sielkundige, hoe verdien Paul sy eie geld? How does Paul earn his own money? So with art, so hy is 'n kunstenaar, he's an artist, or hy skilder, which just means he paints. Hy doen beeldhouwwerk, so sculpting. Hy maak beelde is an easier way of saying that. Okay, same thing. Cool. I'm just going to stop recording and